Which is better, to specialize in one subject or generalize in several subjects? It's a classic debate of depth versus breadth of knowledge and specialists versus generalists. For a large part after the Industrial Revolution, being a specialist has been the preferred option. In fact, it has become an almost romanticized notion, spending decades focused entirely on one field to achieve the pinnacle of skill in that field has been championed, whereas the idea of generalist has not been so idealized. At a glance, this seems obvious when you look at how so many successful people seem to specialize in one or two specific fields. But in fact, when you take a closer look, you might realize that many aren't actually pure specialists. While they may go much deeper into one field than others, they can also be very good in other fields that support their careers or pursuits. For example, public speaking and social skills are an additional skill sets that frequently accompany those who stand out. These kinds of people can be considered a broader category of generalists that tend to fly under the radar as specialists, partly because you don't necessarily need a degree in psychology to have good social skills. There could be a Nobel Prize-winning physicist who is also a bongo player as well as dabbling artist that was incredibly good at social skills and public speaking, and I am literally talking about a real person here, Richard Feynman. If you look at his Wikipedia page's opening, Feynman looks like a pure specialist in theoretical physics, because that's the only thing he's listed for. But if you scroll down further, or if you had the pleasure of reading any of his books, you might find that they don't match the working idea of a pure specialist. Feynman's known for bongo playing, painting, and for being an incredible author and popularizer of physics. If a pure specialist is someone who only specializes in one field, then it isn't really adequate in describing someone who is incredibly good at theoretical physics, bongo playing, writing, explaining physics to countless people, and more. And Feynman isn't the only one with such a diverse range of interests. In fact, historically speaking, there were times when becoming a generalist was the preferred option, such as during the time of the Renaissance men in Europe. The idea was that man was limitless and should develop all his abilities to their full capacity. One of the most famous Renaissance men was Leonardo da Vinci, who had a wide range of interests and knowledge. From paintings to architecture to mathematics and more, Leonardo was the ideal of his time, an incredibly talented generalist. But you might argue that these people were brilliant in spite of being generalists, rather than because of it. Perhaps these people are truly and simply geniuses, and despite having their interests spread over so many subjects, they managed to become successful and famous. They had more butter to spread on the bread in the first place. If an average person who is not a genius tries to follow their approach and become a generalist, this person might end up spread too thin and fail to achieve significance in anything. And that might be true. Even during the time when generalists like Leonardo da Vinci were the ideal, there were still only so many Leonardo da Vincis. However, that also applies to a specialist world. No matter what field one could choose to specialize in, there will only be so many people at the top. So perhaps neither approach is perfect. Each one carries their own pros and cons. For generalists, some commonly mentioned pros are having a wider base of information to work from in solving problems. Just like how it's easier to fix something with more tools in your toolkit, it's easier to come up with solutions with a wider knowledge base. You would also be more flexible in applying knowledge because you know of so many different fields. Additionally, it is believed that knowing more diverse knowledge could actually help make learning easier. So, due to having more patterns and ideas in their brains, generalists could have an easier time learning more. On the other hand, some cons of being a generalist is that, as incredible as we can be, we are still humans with limited time, energy, and resources. By working on so many different fields, it may be inevitable to sacrifice true depth and a thorough understanding of one particular field. This becomes especially true for fields such as medicine, where one must undergo years of training to truly be proficient in their professions. This is where being a specialist is truly rewarding. Now, with all these details in mind, it seems like asking whether being a generalist or a specialist is better is the wrong question to ask. The real question should be, which approach suits my situation right now? A medical student looking to complete their studies may find the specialist approach the best one, whereas someone hoping to change careers might be more interested in a generalist approach. Naturally, people can also gravitate to a certain approach over the other. Some like going deep in a field and immersing themselves in it deeply, and others prefer to cross many subjects. Personally, as someone who naturally leans to the generalist side of things, I personally think a combination of a generalist and specialist approach suits the current world situation. We live in tumultuous times that require great flexibility. Creativity and the ability to make good decisions on a wide range of matters have become increasingly crucial if we want to be able to seize good opportunities and survive changes. And these traits are all well supported by a generalist mindset. At the same time, deep knowledge is needed to set our skills apart. Being very, very good in an important field has and always will be valuable. This would require a specialist way of thinking. So in reality, to truly thrive, we need both specialist and generalist approaches. Like a skilled painter in sketching out our lives. Maybe being a specialist is about creating the dots, and being a generalist is about connecting the dots. Both are necessary for our big picture. And that's it for today. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to give a thumbs up, comment below, and subscribe. Bye!